Tuesday, March 3rd, 2015, Greater Dayton RTA Board of Trustees Public Board Meeting is hereby called to order. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Hoagie, Ms. Hurd,
Here.
Mr. Corrado, Mr. Depp,
Here.
Ms. Kirsten,
Here.
Ms. Howard, Ms. Jones, Mr. Williamson.
Here.
Thank you.
At this time, we do not have a quorum, so this will not be a public meeting. There will be no action taken. However, we will receive committee reports and any other information that the RTA has to present to the board. So the first committee report is Finance and Personnel. Ms. Hairston?
Thank you. The Finance, Personnel, and Planning Committees met for a jointly held meeting on Tuesday, February 17th. The Finance Personnel Committee did not have any action items. Therefore, today I will only provide an informational summary. Financial statements, Ms. Stanford reported that RTA's auditors, Charles E. Harris and Associates, are currently on site reviewing year-end 2014 financial statements. RTA experienced significant sales tax increases over the course of 2014. Currently, year-to-date sales tax revenues are $1.3 million above the budgeted amount. Ms. Stanford continues stating non-recurring expenses booked in December included a $1 million write-down of obsolete trolley parts and a write-down of legal fees receivables. Preliminary results for year-end 2014 reflect net operating income after RTA depreciation expense of $1.6 million, which compares to a budgeted income of $200,000. Ms. Stanford also reported that during the course of 2014, RTA's cash and investment balances have improved considerably. Cash and investments at December 31st, 2014 total $47.6 million, an increase of $7.8 million over 2013. As there are significant capital purchases planned during the 5-year budget planning window, a major portion of these funds must be set aside for local match amounts required. Planned purchases include rolling stock, which is buses, as well as campus-wide facility improvements. Further service additions have been planned during 2015. Mr. Thomas then reported on recent financial information. For January 2015, RTA's net operating loss after RTA depreciation expense is $392,000. This compares to a budgeted operating loss of $597,000. The better-than-anticipated performance significantly relates to higher investment revenue and lower operating expenses related to wages and benefits, contract services, and utilities. Sales tax update. The most recent report was not available at the meeting, but subsequently, Ms. Stanford reported that November 2014 receipts are 1.7% higher than the amount received in 2013. For the first 11 months of the year, we have seen a 5.9% increase. Operating and capital acquisition schedules. There were no questions from Ms. Howard about the operating and capital acquisitions schedules. Mr. Hoagie asked the group if receiving this document quarterly was acceptable, and committee members agreed that it was. Madam Vice President, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next, we have the Planning Committee report. I will be giving this report on behalf of Chairman Janet Jones. The project mobility operational changes. Mr. Donahue and Mr. Paulus, help me out here.
Chiquio.
Okay. And Mr. Policicchio presented various changes planned to enhance project mobility services. The overall goal is to improve passengers per hour to 2.0 and to improve on-time performance to 95%. Elements of change include updating scheduling methods, negotiating customer pickup times, and enhanced staff training to improve reservations and service delivery. A communication outreach effort is planned to notify our customers of these planned improvements. The Dayton Mall Area Study. Mr. Eckler reported that the RTA planning staff has met with Miami Township consultant Stantec Urban Places Group to discuss transit access needs to the doors of the Dayton Mall. Public forums have been held at the Miami Township offices as well as Cox Arboretum. Study completion is expected in the fall of 2015. Job Center. Planning and operations staff have met with Job Center officials to discuss future Job Center redesign and access plans. An important part of this effort is to improve access for RTA service and our riders. Preliminary plans illustrate a much improved entry point for RTA services off of Hopeland Avenue. RTA staff will provide periodic progress reports on this project, which is expected to begin in the summer of 2015. Vention. Since 1952, Vention has been sponsored by the Dayton Amateur Radio Association. It is the world's largest amateur radio gathering, attracting hams from around the globe. The event will be held this year on May 15th through 17th, and once again, the RTA will be providing shuttle service from the former Salem Mall parking lots to Hare Arena. Over the years, this service has been very popular with Vention attendees, and we are happy to report that RTA has already sold 4,000 weekend passes for this event. Read on RTA. This year's summer reading program has already begun with the March 2nd internal employee book collection to recognize Read Across America Day. The book distribution to children will begin June 19th with a community kickoff event. RTA has joined with Project Read, the Dayton Metro Library, Ready, Set, Soar, and a number of other organizations to participate in this year's summer reading program. RTA Smart Choice. Marketing staff has met with Premier Health Partners Human Resources staff to discuss the RTA Smart Choice program. They have agreed to survey their employees to determine their transportation access needs. Staff has also met with P&G's temp agency, Debbie's Staffing, to discuss the Smart Choice program as well. And finally, Mr. Eckler discussed the new customer ride guide, progress on the new route number 64, senior mobility route, and our growth in social media contacts. And that concludes the planning report. Next, we have the Investment Advisory Committee report. Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The Investment Advisory Committee met on February 19th for an informative discussion on RTA's cash and investment portfolio, as well as diesel fuel price and strategy. In attendance were Brad Drager and Mike Fink from Raymond James, RTA's financial advisors, and Jeff LeMunyon of Linwood Capital, RTA's fuel management consultant. Mr. Fink reported on a number of macro factors influencing the economy and interest rates. He pointed to headwinds and tailwinds of economic growth, sort of a good news, bad news observation of the major themes that Raymond James will be monitoring as part of the overall investment strategy his team will be employing. Mr. Fink suggested that the good news is that while unemployment has come down below 6%, the bad news is that broad-based wage growth has remained stagnant. This poses a challenge for the Federal Reserve as they try to balance the desire to boost wages while at the same time keeping inflation in check. Another bit of good news is the strength of the United States dollar. The bad news is that the strength of the dollar can be tied into weak economic growth in both the emerging and developed global economies. While a strong dollar is good news for American companies who buy imports from other countries, it's bad news for American companies who export goods abroad. The likelihood of rising short-term interest rates may be good news for persons wanting to borrow money and invest capital in new projects. The bad news may be inflationary pressure that could occur from too much money flowing into the economy too fast. While rising rates would be a natural response to a growing economy, market reaction to Fed policy moves could create additional volatility. Positive factors affecting the U.S. economy include lower energy prices, improved housing and employment fundamentals, and stronger corporate profits. Speaking of the energy sector, the combination of increased supply of oil and gas as a result of hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling, as well as Saudi Arabia's decision to starve out high-cost producers of energy by keeping prices low, will likely lead to continued low energy costs for at least the next 12 to 18 months. Fed policy is also a theme the Raymond James team will be monitoring. While debate still exists within the Fed itself regarding when to raise the funds rate, there seemed to be general agreement that any change in monetary policy will be data dependent, again with the primary focus being on wages and the tightness of the labor market. Finally, domestic politics was discussed. Republicans now control Congress but lack the 60-seat supermajority in the Senate or a two-thirds majority in either chambers to override a presidential veto. As a result, there is likely to be agreement on minor issues, but major issues such as tax or entitlement reform may have to wait until after next year's presidential election. Given this backdrop, the Raymond James investment team continues to maintain their current strategy of focusing on insured certificates of deposit for the shorter portion of the portfolio, callable secondary mid-coupon discounted agencies for the intermediate portion, and higher coupon step-up securities for the longer portion of the portfolio. The portfolio currently is composed of approximately 60% CDs and 40% federal agency securities. The average weighted maturity of the portfolio currently stands at 2.54 years, but due to the inclusion of callable structures, the effective maturity and duration of the portfolio stands at approximately 1.7 years. Yield to final maturity is based on a cost is at 1.20%, with the worst-case basis yield of 1.01%, or cash flow related to coupon interest of $386,000. Approximately 32% of the portfolio will come due in the next 2 years. As some of the lower coupon securities roll off, the Raymond James strategy will be to replace with higher yielding longer date securities to increase overall portfolio yield. This coincides with the Raymond James research suggesting that the proceeds of maturing securities will be available as the previously mentioned monetary policy causes interest rates to finally start rising. Next, Mr. Jeff Lemunyon of Linwood Capital presented a diesel fuel price risk management report, including graphical presentations. The following key points were made to the committee. OPEC's decision to not cut production, combined with robust United States domestic production, has caused an oversupply globally of oil. A stronger U.S. dollar caused by the strength of the U.S. economy relative to other economies has caused oil prices to decline further than otherwise expected, since almost all oil globally is bought and traded in U.S. dollars. Balance in supply and demand will not be restored until late 2015 or early 2016. Balance will be restored by lower global production, higher demand, or both. Prices remain low and expected price variability is high. While rig count, that's oil rig count, is down, production remains strong on the rigs operating and demand growth weak. Growing inventories will keep prices low for the time being. Speculation can and will increase when market fundamentals warrant. A lively discussion was held on the committee about the pluses and minuses of fuel hedging during this time of rapid oil price decline. The following strategy was recommended by Mr. Lemunyan. The market has stabilized at low prices, yet continues to remain volatile. The strategy was to increase our 2016 position from 26% to 88% in the $1.80 to $1.90 futures range. This is an expected cost hedge of $2 to $2.10. And to extend hedging to 36 months forward in order to hedge 2017 at $2.20 per gallon total cost. The committee will further consider Mr. Lemunyan's suggested strategy at the upcoming April 23rd committee meeting. Madam Vice Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Executive Director?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. One informational note and then a little presentation for the board and the general public, I would say. This coming Thursday at 10:30 in the morning, weather permitting, on Main Street in front of Right Stop Plaza, there will be a press conference held by Bike Miami Valley and the other founding partners of the Dayton Bike Share for the primary purpose to do what we're calling the name reveal. The name and the branding of the Bike Share system will be revealed at that point in time. We will obviously be participating in the event and talking some about our role in regard to the Bike Share program with the ownership and maintenance of the bikes. So that's going to be an exciting moment. I know with the snow on the ground, it's hard to think about bicycles, but we are not that far away from the launch, pending the on-time delivery of the stations and the bikes. So wanted to give you a heads up about that. And then, Nathan, if you want to turn this thing on, I'll come around and we want to do a little presentation on our Customer First program. I would arguably say this really dated back to about 2006. I'm looking at Frank for a reason. He's one of the people in the room that remembers 2006 when we actually rented the convention center for a day and spent the day meeting one-on-one with our customers about issues they had, mainly due, wow, it's really dark in here now. Had to do with concerns about responsiveness to complaints and things like that. Well, out of that, one of the outgrowths of that in the long run was what we call the Customer First program. And I want to do a little bit of a presentation on that to help people understand what it's about, what it means, and why we have it in place. So it was dubbed our customer service promise, and the idea is actually pretty simple. We actually appreciate the fact that we have customers and what they mean to us, and we wanted to make sure that we were giving all the effort we could to make sure that the service we provided was of the highest quality, and most importantly, that those that represent RTA, whether that's myself or any person who wears the logo, is going to meet those expectations. So the promise from us to the customer is safe service. We want to have courteous, clean, accessible buses. We want people to know they can be heard. We want our service to be on time. And we want to find a way when we can to use technology to better inform customers, say in days of inclement weather. It's very hard to see there, but that's one of our text alerts, I believe, when we have a significant service delay. And then this program was started. A lot of people used to refer to our complaint process in a very negative way. Our answer to that internally was to say we will make everyone on the senior management team directly accessible to the general public. And that includes me. If people want to complain to me, they're able to do that. Although we encourage them to make use of the Right to the Top program, because if you have a specific complaint, say about the condition of a bus, I'm definitely going to have to get with Bill about the condition of that bus so he can do that. So you can save a step by doing that. But the idea is that you can do this at night, you can do it via phone, you can do it via email, but you can get directly in contact with anybody on the senior team. There we go. Oops. I went the wrong way, didn't I? That's why you're here, Nathan, to tell me when I go the wrong direction on this. Okay. So the goals were to revamp the customer service promise program, and that included something that people aren't really aware of. We invested in an additional full-time employee, a gentleman that works out of this building, and his job is to honcho complaints. We actually bought software to go with the system so that I can see from my desktop, and any of us on the senior team can, any specific complaint that was logged and what the status of the complaint is, and if there had been follow-up, things like that. But we decided it was worth investing the additional person to make sure that things were being addressed a little better. So that's primarily the job of Mark Stankiewicz downstairs, and then he works directly with the supervisors in the operations department or the leadership, depending on, you know, what the need is. So the idea is we're making the investment to make sure that our customers get the service we had anticipated. When they don't, we want to make sure we address issues right away. So the next steps, we're looking to do more with this program and to get it further out there in the public. New look maybe, but the same promise. We were redesigning some of the materials that go with it, and redistribution, and making use of social media, for example, it's a good example today of that's the way people want to do business with us sometimes. They want to use their social media sites, and we need to be prepared to do that. We have always had, or at least since the beginning of the program, we've had signs inside the buses. Those are being redesigned. But we're using these other assets available to us to make sure we do that. We're also using community advocates, and those are agencies we work for on a regular basis, or our consumer advisory group, which meets regularly in this room, actually. And also the priority boards within the city of Dayton. They're always a good resource for us to help us get input. So internally, the new materials are being posted on internal boards. We're doing newsletter write-ups, and obviously, again, exercising use of the social media. We're making sure we're more careful about what we do, and then we're working with this information in new employee training. We're making it very clear that we want employees to understand what the whole issue of service quality is about. We bring in a lot of special speakers in new employee training for a lot of different reasons, and this is just another addition to that. We do special training on safety and security and securement for persons that have mobility issues, but we're adding another layer to that, and it's all really in line with our core values. But really, the bottom line to me is this is a program that can work, and people need to take advantage of it. And I know that sometimes we get people that wait until days like today where they can come and talk directly to the board, but I can assure you if it's a service-related issue, the board's going to have to refer that to me for an answer, and in that case, I'm going to have to go to the direct department that's responsible for it. So we encourage people, when they can, if they have an issue with us, especially if it's service-related, don't wait. I ran into a woman who was downstairs just yesterday, and she said, I'm probably going to be at the meeting. And I said, well, is there something I can help you with? Well, I was able to answer her question right there, and I don't see her here today. So that's what we need to do. You know, the idea behind the program is to get people answers quickly and efficiently, and that's what it's there for. We just hope more and more people take advantage of it in the future. They do. And I think it's demonstrated that it's much better than it was maybe in 2006, and that the investment we've made in both the software and especially the full-time emphasis for someone really to bird dog issues is paying off for us. But will we ever be perfect? Probably not. But to me, that's the better measure of the organization, how we react when we do have issues. So that's the presentation, unless you have questions.
Is old business? There being none, next item is new business. The next item on the agenda, if this were a public board meeting, is public comment. Because we don't have a quorum, we have said this is an informational meeting, and therefore we do not have public comment at informational meetings. However, keeping in mind our customer first, I'm not setting a precedent. I'm making an exception that at this informational meeting, because we did have members of the public who came anticipating a public meeting, that we will go ahead with the public comments. Is that okay with the members of the board that are here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The guidelines for public speaking is that the speaker must read, sign, date, and complete this form before the Board of Trustees meeting begins. You are to give us your name and your topic. You have, when I recognize you, you are to come to the podium, but we also make an exception. If you can't come to the podium, we have a mic. You give your name and your address and your topic, and then you have 3 minutes. We have a light. Green is when it starts. Yellow, you have 30 seconds, and red light, you have to sit down. The first request we received was from Matthew Lee. The topic is weather and the ability to use stops. Mr. Lee, would you come to the podium, please? Okay, name, address, and topic, and then we'll turn the light on.
My name is Matthew Lee, and topic is, his address is 90 Springfield Street, and topic is being able to use the stops in this weather, the accessibility to use these stops 'cause with wheelchairs and stuff and devices in this weather, accessible to it, how the problem is.
Okay. You don't have to talk, you don't have to talk for a full 3 minutes, if that's your,
Okay, I don't, oh, there it is. There's like, up by my house, I live over on Springfield Street, and I used to stop at Van Leer.
okay.
This last Sunday, if it wasn't for the bus driver at 1232 going westbound on 1, I wouldn't have been able to get from the stop bench onto the bus when he put the ramp down. Because there's some bus stops, you're lucky if you can get to them. So, because you got a person in a wheelchair or these, oh, pardon from my speech, but we're like these people with these wheel walkers. There's some of them stops. There is no way you can get on them. Up to them stops nowhere. There's sidewalks. I mean, and they clear the streets and all. Sometimes that's the only place you have to stand is where the traffic is, and you can't get up on them with some of them curves unless you're a goat or something. It's almost impossible. There's a number of stops, at least on 3rd Street alone, of them was falling into the street at the cars because you can't get up on them. And sometimes the bus drivers, I've noticed when it's bad weather, you get the drivers that are a lot nicer than when it's good weather. Because that bus driver, he pulled up as far as he could get in that snow to put that ramp out and offered to come off his seat to come help me get down there on that ramp into the bus. But there's some, I mean, I wish there was some way somebody can get out there to have something. I mean, I've seen salt truck, I've seen RTA truck out there put salt and stuff out on the streets for the buses because somebody carve out a walkway so we can get at least from the street onto the sidewalk where it's safe till we can get up on the bus. I mean, yeah, I'll walk in the street where it's right along the curb, but there's just sometimes it's a little
Now, just
harder to
quick,
do
Are
it.
you talking about around the bus stop or the path to get to the bus stop?
There's a lot of them stops, there's no pad because there's just ice and stuff. It's like that, and you couldn't get a wheelchair up to that. And if you're in a wheelchair or something like these ladies with these little carts, you can get that ramp some places down the street so you can get them on it, on that bus. And there's a lot of people I know that won't be using the bus because they can't get on it.
Okay,
It's just not possible.
thank you,
I mean,
sir.
I try my best, and I mean, I'm one of them people that you hear enough complaints from people. I'll come in there and find a lady downstairs at the desk for compliments, and I throw a lot of people off bringing compliments in. But there's just, I wish something could be done that they could at least carve us out a path at the pads. And I see people without mobility devices fall almost into traffic, getting up on some of them.
Okay, sir, thank you. And this would be
I'd love to make a comment, Matthew. We share your frustration. We have over 3,500 bus stops, which would make it a literal impossibility for us to get them cleared when it snows. We did do an experiment in the snowstorm a few weeks ago. We had a not-for-profit entity that has folks involved in community service attempt to go out and do some clearing of stops, and it was very limited in terms of success, in terms of how much we got done. Our folks focus on our transit centers because they're very high-volume areas. There's 1,100 buses, for example, that go through the transit center here downtown. But we do not have the manpower to get out and clear all of the 3,500 bus stops. We wish there was a simple way. We know we have a lot of property owners that do it because it's on or adjacent to their property, and we really appreciate that. But it's a great frustration, and it's something that we don't have the silver bullet answer for just yet.
Thank you for your concern, sir. The next request is from Sandra Smothers. However, she did not indicate a topic. Pardon me? Okay, did you, she needs a mic. Name, address.
My name is Sandra May Smothers. I live at 215 McDaniel Street, apartment 107, Dayton, Ohio. I'm a citizen of Montgomery County. My first concern is Mr. Doherty. Last Friday on the 28th, I had a 7:30 pickup going to 9200 North Main Street to Myers. I didn't get picked up until almost 8 o'clock. I don't know what happened with the situation out there. And then coming back home, I was in the store. I was supposed to have a 10:02 pickup. I called and verified it with reservations. It was told to me I had a 9:45 pickup, and never I do a 9:45 when I go that early to Myers. The driver came in and had me paged, which I appreciate that from him. But I was really mad because I had to hurry up, the cashier had to hurry up, get my groceries loaded and help me get them out to the van. Because I could have got left in no show, and I really would have appreciated that. Now, the second thing I got to say, last time I spoke to you about Project Mobility, you said it was it was doing better. I don't think so. You need some drivers out there, and you need some caring drivers. Some of your drivers do care, and we do need more drivers. We had over, I know, 150 to 200 drivers at one time to run the service, and it was running very good. When you came, it was running good. So I'd greatly appreciate it if you would get it back in order, because it's just getting ridiculous out there. People getting picked up late, people getting left, you know. I've seen people out at Myers crying because they didn't have a ride home, and that's not right.
Are you through with your comments?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I'd encourage you to speak to Brandon Polachicchio before you leave.
Oh.
He'll take your complaint for last Friday, or you can call us. For the record, we've never had more than 105 Project Mobility operators. I know you get some information from bus drivers. It isn't always correct. But our staffing is where we think it should be at this point. And again, if you had a problem last Friday, I wish you would have called us then. We could have addressed it same day.
I didn't
Thank
have time. I had to run. I was running.
The next request form, and pardon me if the first name is Candace.
Yes,
What is your last name?
Woods,
Winston?
Woods.
Woods, okay. Candace Woods, Dayton, Ohio. She did not indicate the topic. So name, address, and topic, please.
Okay, my name is Candace Woods, and I live at 215 McDaniel Street, apartment 505, and my topic is also on Project Mobility. Okay, I ride Project Mobility all the time. Now, I've had experience with drivers that, we'll give you one right now. I had got into an argument, almost into an argument with Cecil about a no-show letter, a warning letter that I got from him. Okay, on the 21st of January, I was at work. I get off at 4:30. I had a 4:35 pickup. The driver came supposedly, according to Cecil, at 4:25. He came at 4:27 and left me stranded at 4:30 at the VA. I had to wait almost 45 minutes to get a ride going home. I mean, this is like, you know, sometimes my drivers, they'll come early. I appreciate it. Sometimes they come late. They come later than 20 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, almost to an hour. And the situation with the $29, you know, I would appreciate it if you just turn around and just bring it down some, because, you know, I'm on a fixed income. I can't afford that all the time. And I'm a vet.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. for your comments.
I would encourage you, and same as Sandra May, if you have a driver issue, you should call us so we can pull the video on the bus. And you may want to talk to Brandon if you're not certain about the window issues related to pickup times, so that we make sure that we schedule you a pickup time so that it doesn't interfere with your ability to be picked
Well,
up.
I'm gonna turn around, I'm gonna give you another example. On January the 15th, I had 11:35 pickup going to the VA. I called dispatch at 12 o'clock. They put me on hold for 7 minutes trying to find out where my driver was. My driver didn't come until 10 minutes after 12. He had one person dropping off on McDaniel, picking me up. Then, instead of taking me to the VA, he had 2 other people going to Chase Bank down here on Main Street. We go over there on Middle to pick up one of the twins. By the time the driver realized that it was 12:30, I was 20 minutes late getting to work.
And
I
again-
had to explain to my boss why I'm late.
And again, Candace, if you would have called us that day, we could have
I
put that.
did. I called that day. I was on the phone with dispatch,
But-
waiting on them to turn around. They verified I had an 11:35 pickup, but the driver told me he was picking me up at 12:16 and dropped me off at 12 minutes after 1.
Well, if that driver would have done what they should have, they would have been instructed to take you to work first and then deliver the other customers. So again, you can talk to Brandon about that. It highlights the importance, again, to me, that, you know, we can deal with a lot of these sorts of issues right away. And at 4:27 on your first complaint, that would have been within the window, which would have been their time to pick you up. It wouldn't have been an early pickup.
Thank you. We received 3 requests that came in after the meeting started. And even during a public board meeting, we're not supposed to acknowledge public speaking requests that were received after the meeting has begun. Two of them are about project mobility, and one of them is about clearing the stops. Shall we? I've already made an exception.
I think it's your discretion.
Oh, see, they keep leaving these things up to me.
Madam Chair, may I make a comment?
Yes.
For these last 2 speakers. Just want to kind of let the public know that we as the board at our committee meetings, which are public and open, staff reports statistics to us regarding these on-time performances. And the on-time performances for the paratransit part of the fleet are, for this year, right around 90% of the time. We had a low number in November last year of 86% and a high of 93% in April. And I know that staff is always very concerned about eliminating that 10% and making it 100% on time, but things come up and things happen, and unfortunately for some of you, this has occurred. But I just wanted to comment on the record that this is something that staff is very, very focused upon and does report to the board on a monthly basis as to what those numbers are. And while 90% isn't 100%, it's a number we'd still like to see improved. it is something that I just want to make sure everybody understands that is out there.
And we have had the staff do some investigation and report to us what are the common things that occur with the ones in the with that 10% that misses the mark. And what are the common things that occur with the 90% that make the mark. And part of the changes that the staff is implementing is trying to put in the changes that will impact those 10% that seem to miss the mark. Okay. Since they've left it up to me, I'm not establishing precedent, but I will go ahead and entertain the comments from the 3 requests that were received after the meeting started. So, first is Mary Miller, and she has indicated her topic was project mobility. So Mary, do you need the, okay, would you state your name, your address, and your topic, and then we will begin.
Okay, my name is Mary Miller, live at 85 Ridge Road, apartment 41, Brookville, Ohio. My topic again is project mobility. I have old questions about the premium service, which Brandon sent a letter, but I still haven't got the actual procedure and process, because as you know, the right has bus stop, so it wouldn't be considered outside of the fixed route, so it shouldn't have the premium fare. But I'm still trying to get to the bottom of that one. The other one was, I had called to make appointments for the doctor's office. And previously, if you have a doctor's appointment, it goes long, there was a number that the person at the desk, the receptionist or someone there could call. I've been told that that's been done away with, which now leaves it to the doctor's office to call in on the regular line to go through the holds, the transfers, and options, which they're not willing to do, because a lot of times it takes away from their patient care time. So I wanted to find out what is the resolution in taking away the number so that there is a fail-safe, so that the consumer is not wasting the driver's time and you all have an opportunity to reroute that person. Because I've seen people left at their doctor's office. My own mother has left her appointment before the doctor was finished because she didn't want a no-call, no-show, and they were there to pick her up. So that's a great concern. The last concern I had was basically, we don't have enough project mobility drivers. The drivers that we do have, they seem to be stretched to capacity and then some, and a lot of them, they keep their composure, they're very nice, they're courteous, they do what they can. But the pressure they're being put under comes from this computer-generated routing that doesn't take into account human error or the weather. And as far as getting up here on time, I parked in the handicap spot right outside the door. I actually had to wade across the water. Luckily, my waterproof boots stayed waterproof. But then once I got in, I had to locate someone to send me up. And you know, it is a little bit of a stretch when you're disabled to think about going across that puddle. And it's not a puddle, it's a pond. But this is right in front of the RTA building. You all have renovated everything else. Can't we get a little bit of a working parking facility now? I know you have the dumpster and the snow.
Okay. The first 2 items are marked, would go to the same person with project mobility, and it has for the
It would. The
parking lot.
premium service issue can relate to service hours, not just service locations. So Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, we only serve in the rush hours. So trips outside the rush hour would be considered a non-ADA trip. But that's something that Brandon or Jim can explain in detail, if that helps you. Again, I feel pretty strongly about our driver situation. One of the improvements we talked about at the committee meeting a couple weeks ago that we'll be implementing is a change in how we request people make appointments, and that we schedule buses that are appointment driven as opposed to pickup driven. If you demand to be picked up at a certain time, you may be harming your ability to be as on time as you can be. So we're looking to make a shift in how we operate the business to improve the on-time performance, and include having more people reviewing the scheduling that's going on, and even a few more bodies out there. But the numbers that we have manpower-wise are in pretty good shape. I've been doing this since 1976, and you have my word that we have enough people. I'm sure that's not good enough for some folks, but that is the situation we have. And our intent is to get as close to or above 95% if we can. But Project Mobility is a very specialized service. And some of you who use it know that. Some of you know that a lot of the people we carry have very specialized medical conditions that often can result in they cannot be accommodated by the schedule they even made in the beginning. For example, dialysis patients, which make up 20% of our daily workload in Project Mobility. So a dialysis patient, especially on a return trip, can wreak havoc with our schedules, but we work hard to get as close as we can to it. So we're open to positive comments there, but we can absolutely take care of that. Again, if there's a driver complaint, we need to know about that as soon as possible so we can retrieve the data from the bus to verify one way or the other whether we have an issue with the bus driver that we need to address, and we will.
I think the other issue was the number to call if your time is going to change
Right.
at the doctor's office.
They used to have the number you call into the dispatcher, let them know that you're not gonna be on time, so you need to reschedule, or is there any way they can come later?
Brandon and Jim can give you that number after the meeting. We have direct lines, obviously.
I was told that it didn't exist, that they had done away with it.
I can assure you we have telephones in the dispatch office.
No, they had done away with giving the number. You had to go in through the regular system where you do the option 2 and then the next option.
I think that is the number. If you call Project Mobility and it's in the sequence as I remember it. But again, the expert's sitting right over there. He's happy to speak to you.
I just have one little question about that. Was there a change made in the number that?
I can address that, Sharon. There is an emergency number in our dispatch office that's for emergencies only. And it primarily has to do with operator issues. And sometimes operators give that phone number out, and they should not, because then it gets tied up. We literally get fixed route schedule information calls in it, and from time to time they have to change the number because we've had emergency calls missed because of people abusing that phone number. The proper number to call, I don't have it on the top of my head, but when you call that number, you get a prompt, and if you take the prompt, the one prompt, I believe, takes you to folks in dispatch to deal with scheduling issues.
So that the number that they should call, if they know what the prompt is, they don't have to listen to the list of prompts. They could just be given the number and say,
Oh, sure.
as soon as you hear it, as soon as it comes on, you hit 4, and you don't have to listen to the prompts, and
That's
you
true.
get to where you need to get. So I would hope that when we try to implement, or when we do implement, the changes that we'd like to implement in order to improve the service, that people are receptive to trying it and using it. Let's see if it works. Because the issue here is that from all of our meetings that we've had, staff is not trying to do you in. They are trying to do what they feel is right. And if we work with them, and hopefully we can get to a point where we get to the 95% or so that we want to be at. So I'm just asking that there be open-mindedness to trying the changes that are being requested. I know one of them is to ask that you say the time you need to be at a place versus asking someone to pick you up at a certain time, so that we can make sure that you get there by the time you're supposed to be. The only other question I have about that is, if somebody is getting off work and we have a window, how do we address the issue of the fact that they may not be able to leave work before their end time is
That's
over?
quite easy. We train our call takers, in the new system. That's part of the issue, to make sure that the window doesn't start before that
Before they
time.
get
But
off.
if someone demands a pickup time specifically, what they just demanded, whether they knew it or not, was a pickup time 10 minutes before that time or 20 minutes after. So I think some of it is, we have to work harder, our call takers do, to make sure they try and identify the purpose of the trip so we can avoid that sort of situation. And I would like to make one last comment. Project Mobility is a service that has no dedicated funding. Roughly 25% of our budget, over $14 million, is spent annually on this service. And that's something that when the taxpayers in Montgomery County voted to fund the RTA, there was no Project Mobility. So this service has grown and grown and grown over the years. We operate more buses and have more bus drivers in our paratransit service than the city of Columbus or the city of Cincinnati, which are much larger urban areas than we are. And we made that commitment. And in fact, in 2007, when we cut 23%, I think the number was, Frank, of our fixed route services, we did not touch Project Mobility. We maintained that service level where it was, and it increased after that. So I hope people understand we're truly committed, and the board has been committed by applying the funds, from our local tax revenues that were dedicated actually to a different purpose to make sure we do. But that still means we need to be good stewards and do it in the most efficient way that we can, and we try to do that.
Ms. Miller?
Yeah, well, with what Mark was saying, aren't a lot of the grants and things that Project Mobility brings in directly related to that particular type of service and are made available for that particular service to be expanded and to revamp it and to make it a better service?
A tiny, tiny fraction of the federal money we receive can be spent in that way. It doesn't come anywhere near the need of the $14 million. It's, I think it's.
So
It's
is it
about-
matching,
it's
is
about
it the
10%.
matching funds that we're talking about, where you have to match it and they?
Well, all federal funds have to be matched.
Mhm.
But what I'm talking about is the federal funds we're allowed to expend related to service for people with disabilities. And I guess
We're allowed to spend about $1.3 million of our federal money on Project Mobility, but Project Mobility costs $14 million.
Right.
It's not even close.
And that is the operating cost. That doesn't include the cost of the vehicles and so on. So there's.
None of that is
Nope.
on a scale where we have a tax matching situation?
No,
Or a credit situation?
we get a pretty much fixed amounts. They can change year to year, but roughly a fixed amount of federal funds each year. We have to decide how those get spent. Some of it goes into our operating budget for capitalized maintenance and preventive maintenance, and then some goes to vehicle purchases, and that's that. I mean, we don't get enough federal money today even to fund all our capital needs in our current capital plan. So no, there's not, I think there's people talk about that, but there's really never been. In fact, the federal government's really never had a dedicated program to support, well, I go back to the days of Section 504, which is in the 1970s, which was followed by the Americans with Disabilities Act. We in the industry all support the need for the service. We think it's critical, but at the same time, no one at the federal, state, or local level has ever said, hey, I want to vote to increase my taxes to pay for this service and provide unlimited funding. No one's done that. So we've been doing it from the funds that we have. For example, I mean, the fleet we have on Project Mobility now is funded primarily with federal funds. Could have been used for fixed route buses or other uses. But again, it's a little over $1 million that we can get from the federal government to do that. There are no other programs.
Thanks for that clarification. The next request that was received after the meeting began, that we're going to acknowledge, was from Carla Pitzinger, and she has multiple topics: fear stops and overcrowding on number 9, and number 9 to go to shelter. So Carla, if you'll give your name, address.
Okay, well, before I begin, I just want to mention, I was waiting downstairs for about a good 5 minutes. The elevator, I kept pushing the button, it wasn't opening. So finally this guy came over and unlocked it, so, that's part of the reason why I was late. So I wanted to mention that
5 minutes, yeah.
here. My name's Carla Pitzinger, 3329 Shady View Road, Marine, Ohio, 45439. I hear other people's concerns and all. It hurts me because, as some of you know, my husband was paraplegic, and he worked in Dayton for a few years, and it was many times when it snowed. He can get to the bus stop until he got his van here. So I can relate to that, but since I use a cart here, the bus stop in front of the library, it's very hard to get over, as Matt Lee mentioned here. It's terrible. So I know some people in wheelchairs, they can't even get out. And, I'm really for people getting out and going to their appointments as much as possible. I've had some problems emailing Mr. Bard, but I'm working on that. as well as, I wanted to support the equal access transportation to Dayton Mall here. And, I'm still working, I still would like, something about number 9, the overcrowding part here, which several people have would like some more space here on that route. But also, if could be more transportation from the Gateway Men's Shelter somehow with bus number 9 and to Project Cure, where a lot of guys from the shelter, they have to walk several blocks to and from the number 9. And there's just several hundred. And it clogged, to me, it would lighten up the load to number 9, the overcrowding as well. And I have talked to Mr. Eckler here, about the Dayton Mall. He said you'd email a letter to Debbie Ferguson here, in support of the bus going, 7 buses. And you want to make that clear, 7 buses to go to the Dayton Mall. Am I correct?
7 routes, yeah.
There. I want to get with you on that later. I just would like to remind other cities, please clear or help or have any kind of community service to clear. It's just terrible out there. It's a hassle, and it takes up more time for the buses, I know too. So I wanted to say all of them have been very nice in dropping me off and clearing driveways and all. What else? I could go on for 3 hours, but I know I only got 3 minutes here. So, thank you.
I would just encourage, I know you're associated somehow with Community Action Partnership, if that organization.
I want to make it clear, I'm right now, Mary Miller, she's the chairperson.
I understand.
I've been coming here for a long time, and I have come here before, but we formed an RTA committee.
What I want to do is encourage people to, if people have ideas for solutions, get them to Frank, get them to me, get them to others. But again, if we parked all the buses and sent every employee we had out to shovel bus stops, 1, it would mean we're not running buses that day. 2, we still wouldn't get 3,500 bus stops cleared when a snowstorm hits. There's no simple answer to that. We're as frustrated as everyone else with it. We work with the city to try and get the streets clear. I'm just trying to say we're looking for positive solutions too. We tried in the last storm to use a nonprofit agency. It had a very tiny little impact.
Well, I still want to work on with that, but I want to mention the 100-some that are contracted out to just be cleared out once within a 24 period after it snows. You get sometimes the street people piling on snow again. But other places, I don't see them cleared. And these are major stops, like the one on 3rd Street, right in front of the public main library. It's just like, wait, okay, I know you're busy and everything, but 2 or 3 days later, come on now.
I'm sorry.
Again, we spend fortunes when it snows on overtime for our maintenance people. There's no way we can get the 3,500 bus stops. I wish there was. But again, I encourage people, if you have an idea for an actual solution, let us know. I mean, we tried one, and it didn't work out very well at all. It's not something, go right ahead. Gavel me out.
The last one that was received at 3:27. Okay, you may have to help me with this. Lynetta Day? Okay. And the topic is project mobility, so if you would give your name and your address.
My name is Renetta Day. I stay at 1465 West 3rd Street, Dayton, Ohio. I have a concern because I had a meeting one day with down in community action, and I meet with somebody else down here. And I got through with my appointment early, and I called and asked, because they sent somebody out to pick me back up, and they told me no. I had to sit there and wait 2 hours before my bus come to pick me up, and I don't think that's necessary.
Was that your original pickup time, the 2
no,
hours?
No, I told them they're supposed to came back about 2 something to pick me up, but I got done with my meeting early. And I called Vention, could they pick me up?
And they said, no.
They said no, and I don't think it's right to be sitting there 2 hours waiting on a bus to pick you back up. And I ran into a lady at the doctor's office, she had to sit there about that time. I said, well, you could start coming to project mobility meetings.
Okay.
That's unnecessary.
Because I do think, probably, aren't you supposed to call your time in at least the day before?
Yes, the reservations are.
So,
I did.
those.
So if you did, again, I would encourage you to speak to Mr. Polachicchio before you leave today, so we can investigate that specific complaint. It is a fixed schedule, we don't have buses sitting around waiting to be sent out.
But I know you had some no-shows.
Well, we do get no-shows, that happens, and it does. And when we can do that, we do. And sometimes we need the labor that's available to do other things, but that doesn't mean that exactly when you wish to be picked up, which is not your scheduled time, we're able to do it. It's just, it's not that type of service. I don't think if you called a taxi cab, they would immediately come and get you. And we're not a taxi service, we're a shared ride, pre-scheduled service, which makes that different.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, and as I indicated, this is not a public meeting, but we did make an exception, not a precedent, but an exception that we allowed some public comments. Also not a precedent, but an exception, accepted comments from people who had arrived after the meeting began. So, not a precedent, just in line with the customer service promise, customer first to be heard. With that, I'll go on to board comments.
Yes, Madam Vice President. I'd just like to say that not only am I on the board, I'm also a consumer and a customer of RTA. I ride every day. So those that have made comments about the bus stops, I 100% agree with you. But again, as Mark has said, I do realize that there are 3,500 bus stops. They can't clear them all. So if the people in your community don't get out to help, then it's a lose-lose situation. I wish my bus stops were clear. The only bus stops I have clear are the ones out at Wright State University.
Thank you.
And that's because Wright State clears them.
Yes, that's because Wright State's ground crew clears the bus stops out there.
Okay, my only comment is that I'm glad I don't live in Boston. Other than that, I've made enough comments for today. Okay, is there a need for the executive session? No, because we don't have a quorum, and it's not a public meeting. And since there are no votes to be taken, I can just say that the meeting is, I'm adjourning this informational session. Okay, but I still get to hear from